Okay, so this is the criterion for PTSD, which requires there's certain requirements that you have to have. So let's go over all of these. So the first criterion is a stressor. So what does that mean? That means that the person has been exposed to like death. They've been threatened with a serious illness, or they have actual or threatened sexual violence or something. So that could be direct exposure, that could be witnessing the trauma. I don't know that you realize that the patient can just witness the trauma and have PTSD. So it could be direct exposure, it could be witnessing a trauma, or even learning that a relative or a close friend was exposed to a trauma, like secondhand. And it can be indirect exposure to like the details of a trauma. So, for example, like the fires that are going on in California right now and the deaths associated to it, right? That could spark a PTSD diagnosis based on how the patient perceives it and what's going on. If they start to really ruminate about it and they have the other requirements in these criterion. So don't think that PTSD is just direct exposure. Again, criterion A, you have to have one type of stressor. So that can be an exposure to death, a serious injury, or actual or threatened sexual violence in many ways, including direct exposure, witnessing a trauma, learning that a relative or a close friend was exposed to a trauma, or an indirect exposure to the details of a trauma. Um, so that could be even like a first responder or even a nurse having PTSD because of what she's had indirect exposure to. Okay, so that's criterion one or A. Criterion B is intrusion symptoms. So one is required here. So that's a traumatic event that you re-experience. So what does that look like? That looks like you have memories that are upsetting to you. They're nightmares, they're flashbacks, they're emotional distress after someone's been exposed to a traumatic reminder. It could be physical reactivity after exposure to a traumatic reminder. Okay. So again, you have to have one of those. A lot of times they're flashbacks, memories, or nightmares with the criterion B. So you have to have one of those. Criterion C is avoidance. One is required. So you could have criterion A and criterion B, but if they don't have criterion C, you cannot diagnose them with PTSD. Okay. So avoidance is trauma related thoughts or feelings or trauma related external reminders. Okay. So they're avoiding the trauma related stimuli. So, whatever that stimuli is, that could be thoughts or feelings, that could be external reminders. So, for example, with 9/11, we have a whole day where maybe the news comes on and they go over things with 9/11. That is a reminder that would trigger the patient's memories. So that could, and they start to avoid watching the news that day so that they don't start thinking about it. Okay. Criterion D is negative cognitions and mood. Okay, so the inability to recall key events. That's when you hear about patients can't remember what happened, or they have overly negative thoughts and sometimes even assumptions about the world that might not even be true. So you want to think negative effect on this. Someone who has a decreased interest in activities, like they used to like to go to see fireworks. Now they don't like to go see fireworks anymore because it triggers the PTSD from maybe them witness a gunshot wound or someone getting shot. So feeling isolated, difficulty with being positive. They're in this negative type of funk and they can't get out of it. Criterion E. So you have to have two. Two are required for criterion D. On criterion E, that is arousal and reactivity. So this is when they're hypervigilant. They jump. They jump at a loud noise. They're startled very easily. They have difficulty concentrating. They have risky or destructive behavior or difficulty sleeping. Now, notice there is no requirement for this. We see this a lot, but this is not required. Criterion F, symptoms have to last for more than 1 month. So someone comes in and they come in and it happened yesterday or last week or 3 weeks ago. You can't diagnose them with PTSD. It has to be a month that this has been going on. Criterion G, functional significance, which is required. So there has to be some kind of functional impairment, socially or occupationally. So the symptoms are causing some type of distress where they're functionally impaired. And then criterion H, last but not least, our symptoms are not due to medication, substance use, or other illnesses. So that's just, ruling out any other issues. So I just wanted to be clear on PTSD because a lot of times I notice that students will be like, oh, that's PTSD. Well, did they meet all of these requirements? Very important.